Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and when a stunning model who was, on the cover of magazines, thousands of followers, went missing in Hong Kong, the follow-up search would lead to an apartment in a quiet part of town. Or rather, what had once been an apartment, because now it was a butcher's shop, and inside would be an extremely gruesome discovery. And the perpetrators of this horrific, disturbing act, they were planning their escape on a speedboat, like James Bond, if you can believe that. Now, before we get into it, if you'd like to see new crime videos every week, please subscribe because this is all about that chapter. Now let's give it a go. This story takes us to Hong Kong and to Abby Choi Tin Fung and the absolutely incredible life that she led. Abby was born in 1994, the eldest of 3 girls, and into a very wealthy family who had acquired said wealth, through their business deals throughout China. China, it's a very booming country at the moment, and her family, they worked in the construction industry, so that would pay a pretty penny. She came from a privileged background and she was very, very pretty, so it's not entirely surprising that she would go on to be a model. And, as of early 2023, it seems like she was on the road, to stardom. However, approximately 10 years ago, when Abby was 18 years of age, she married a man who was the same age as her, an Alex Kwong, the son of a former police sergeant named Cao Kwong. Though it seems like his dad, Cao Kwong, resigned from the Hong Kong Police Department in disgrace around 2005 after allegedly being involved in some kind of sexual assault. Together, Abby and Alex, they would have 2 children together, the first of which, a son, was born when Abby was 18 years of age. Now, Abby and the Kwong family, they were extremely close. How long exactly they knew each other is unknown, but it seems like they must have been family friends or something, because, once they got married, Alex and Abby got married, Abby would treat the Kwong family as if they were her own family, completely. She was with them all the time. They became super, super close together. For example, Anthony Kwong, Alex's brother, he would go into business with Abby. Together, they would run a pancake stall, and he would also be her personal driver for a time. And though the marriage of Abby and Alex, it would only last 4 years, they would divorce in 2016, they would still remain really, really close. Abby would still, even though they were her, ex-family now, she still treated them as if they were her family. And Abby would continue to support the lavish lifestyle all the Kwongs led, especially Alex. Abby, as I said, she came from a wealthy family, and her own career, it had a steeply, upward trajectory. She was worth over $10 million herself. Now, Alex, it's been reported that he was unemployed, and in fact, it's also been reported that he had his own troubles with the police, so whether that's what led to their divorce, it's possible. He was allegedly in the gold investment business, but was allegedly kind of more of a snake oil salesman, and had apparently defrauded people out of $1 million. And he also had some sizable debts of his own, which, Abby wasn't paying them off, so that could have been exactly what led to them splitting up. And Abby would later go on to marry a man named Chris Tam, who himself came from, his family, they owned a chain of restaurants in Hong Kong. So, socialite Abby was en route to becoming an extremely successful model. She appeared, on the cover of L'Officiel Monaco, in Paris Fashion Week, Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar. So on one hand, you have this rich, beautiful, generous socialite who seems like it would help out anybody. And then on the other hand, you have this entire family, the Kwong family, who maybe were a little bit shady, maybe had some skeletons in the closet, and they were essentially sponging off of her. This is literally Parasite, by the way, the Korean movie Parasite. This is the exact same plot of it. You got a rich family, you get a poor family who insert themselves into their life, who start sponging off them. One of them was even a driver, for God's sake. God damn. And they still remained close, even after Abby Choi remarried to this new guy, Chris Tam. There was even reports that they would all go on vacation together. Abby, her new husband Chris, and the Kwong family. I mean, she still had kids with them. They would all go off on holidays together. I guess she realized, she came from more than most, and she wanted to share what she had. But you can see how this could all go horribly wrong. Abby had purchased an 1,800 square foot luxury apartment for the Kwong family, and the 2 kids she had with Alex, in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city of Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong, it's an extremely expensive city. Only New York City outranks it as the most expensive in the world. So when you hear exclusive in this city, think like Succession or something, like exclusive with a capital E. She was also, at the same time as she bought this place for the Kwong family, her ex-family, she was also helping out her ex-brother-in-law, Anthony Kwong, purchase a house of his own. Too generous for your own good kind of starts to come to mind. So Abby had this really fancy home for the Kwongs. It was worth over $9 million US. Now this apartment, this huge apartment, it was actually purchased in Kao Kwong's name. He's the elder member who was a former cop. And the reason it was purchased in his name was to avoid paying stamp duty, stamp tax. If you own more than one property, you have to pay extra stamp duty. So that was purchased and it was fully paid off in late 2019. Then at the end of 2022, early 2023, Abby decided she wanted to sell that place after, they'd been living there for about over 4 years at this point. Abby said to the Kwongs, listen, I want to sell this place, but I promise, I'll take care of you guys. I'll find you a new place to live, but this place I want to sell. I mean, after all, she'd bought the apartment. She paid for the whole damn thing. They were lucky to be living there. But they didn't, they weren't too keen on the idea of leaving this place. This led to a bitter dispute with the family that had been closer. Not so much anymore. Abby, though, she was going to sell it. And as long as she could prove that she had purchased the place with her own money, despite it being bought in somebody else's name, in the eyes of the law, it was legally hers. So, in reaction to this, the Kwong family began an extremely gruesome and disturbing plan. In early February 2023, Kao Kwong, he rented an apartment in Tai Po, which is like it's like in a seaside village, quieter part of Hong Kong, a little bit, less expensive. He rented a very small, cheap apartment there. He rented this place in his mistress's name, a masseuse named Young. Now, I got a feeling that Kao Kwong is the kind of person who would have a mistress and would not really give a shit if his wife found out. His wife is named Jennifer and Jenny, and yeah, Kao Kwong, I don't think he would give a shit if anybody knew. On February 21st, Anthony Kwong, remember Abby's personal driver, he drove to her home. Now, she lived in that same exclusive, wealthy neighborhood that she'd bought the place for the Kwongs. I guess she wanted to be, close to her children. So he drove to her house, picked her up, and was due to drive her to collect one of her children, her younger daughter. But that is not what happened. Now, Hong Kong, it's extremely mountainous, right? So to get from where Abby lived to downtown Hong Kong, you'd have to take a tunnel that goes under all those mountains. It appears that as they were driving through that tunnel, they stopped off at the side of the road where Alex Kwong, ex-husband, was waiting, and he got in that car. What happened next is unknown, nothing good, but Abby never arrived to pick up her daughter. And then that evening she was reported missing as her husband, Chris Tam, he couldn't contact her at all. When the police began looking for her, they initially went to Alex and Anthony, right? As you can imagine, Anthony would have been the last person to pick her up. And when they went to them to ask if they knew anything about what had happened to Abby, they tried to fend off the police with, the usual inconsistent, kind of cloudy stories. Like, oh, maybe she did this. Oh, she went there actually. Maybe she did this. Speaking to those two, however, led the police to that small apartment in Taipo. The police thought that maybe she had been kidnapped, that they were holding her in that small apartment where they thought nobody else would find her. So they kicked down the door hoping that she might be okay. However, what they found can only be described as a horror show. Inside, the apartment was completely empty of regular furniture. Instead, it appears that in the couple of weeks since the Kwongs had been renting that apartment, they had been turning it from an apartment into an abattoir. On the ground, covering the walls and the windows, plastic sheeting. They also found electric saws, a hammer, a meat grinder, along with face shields and a raincoat, as in things you might want to wear if you didn't want to get blood on you. They also found Abby's handbag right there. They then went over to the kitchen area, or what was left of it, and there was a fridge. Opening the fridge, they saw, stacked on the shelves, human legs, along with a couple of pots. They pulled out the pots, and looking through them from the top, they looked like regular soup. They saw, broth, vegetables, carrots. They also saw what appeared to be minced meat. On the table just over there was a meat grinder, so at the bottom of that pot, human ribs and a skull. And in the skull, at the back of the skull was a hole, which police theorized there was a hammer right there, as in maybe when, they had been driving, they pulled over, there was Abby, Anthony, and Alex in the car. Maybe Alex, he had a hammer, and when Abby wasn't looking.
About the head, okay, it's a skull, actually. It's no skin or any meat on it. So basically it's a skull with hair, okay. And as I said, unfortunately, there's a hole on the right side rear on the skull. We will do a thorough search again to find the torso and other parts of the missing body.
The police swiftly found and arrested Anthony Kwong, Kao Kwong, and Kao Kwong's wife, the mother, Jenny Lee. They would also arrest Young Young. But not Alex Kwong, because they didn't know where he was. It would later turn out that Alex had immediately gone into hiding. He was in another luxury flat that was rented in Young Young's name, and he was laying low and planned to escape Hong Kong. He was arrested on a pier in southwest Hong Kong just as a speedboat, like James Bond, was waiting for him. And on him he had $60,000 and several luxury watches worth over $500,000 US. He was absolutely going on the run, and he had enough money to make it for a long ass time. 2 more people would be arrested also, and these were the 2 people who had helped organize this speedboat, which is to be Alex's getaway. So 7 people in total were arrested in connection with what happened to Abby Choi. Pleas have not yet been entered. They haven't pled, guilty or not guilty. They won't be entered until May. But despite all of this, in that gruesome apartment, they still haven't found all of Abby.
Officers from the Drainage Services Department arrived at the scene this afternoon to inspect the house and the surrounding areas. They checked if the sewerage system was blocked by any body parts and took samples to check for human tissue, according to sources. Earlier, police continued their search effort at Chengquano Chinese Permanent Cemetery for the 2nd consecutive day. The site is believed to be one of the disposal sites for the 28-year-old's other body parts after her former husband Alex Kwong, who is the key suspect in the case, was previously seen there. Officers deployed drones and abseiled down the hillside to inspect suspicious spots, including rubbish bags. Divers had combed through 3 pools inside the cemetery yesterday, but have not discovered anything so far.
Searches were, and still are, being done in the water, though there's quite a lot of it, and in a graveyard Kao and Anthony visited the day after Abby was last seen alive. So, 7 people in total were arrested in the gruesome murder of Abby Choi. Alex Kwong, her ex-husband, and likely the guy who dealt the killing blow, Anthony Kwong, who was the accomplice and was driving the car at the time and likely helped dispose of the body. Kao Kwong, her ex-father-in-law, who was also thought to have been the mastermind of the entire plot. Jenny Lee, her ex-mother-in-law, who has been charged with obstruction of justice. She knew about what was going on. Young, who helped rent some of the properties involved in the case. And then the two who tried to help Alex Kwong flee Hong Kong. This is a story of an incredible woman, generous to a fault, and her one-time family, who she still thought of as family, ultimately taking advantage of everything she had given them that they didn't fucking do anything for, and then, well, things getting even darker than that. I mean, she was still going to even take care of them, and they, were not having it. They wanted more and more. They wanted everything she had. People getting some help, taking advantage of it, and then finally not taking no for an answer. But that is the story, to date, anyway, of the model Abby Choi. It's pretty dark. But we will leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate being here with me, watching this whole story. There'll be a few videos this week, so look forward to that. Multiple, as in more than 2. So check them out. And also, if you're always looking for more That Chapter stories and longer stories, please check out the That Chapter podcast. That comes out twice a week. Every Monday is a brand new podcast-only story, and Fridays is a mix of new stories and some of my favorites, which I've been dying to revisit. So check that out. But until then, please, as always, take care of each other and yourselves, because I love you for watching this video. Mike out.